So it was great seeing Vertex AI and GK and how you can use those things to get the most out of the great capabilities that exist in Gemma. What we're going to do in this session is talk about how we can make use of Gemma within a stream processing pipeline. So as an example, imagine you've built a mobile application, and in your mobile application, users can upload reviews. Now, before those reviews go onto the site, you want to do some processing of those with Gemma. So that's one example that we're going to go see in the live demo. But of course, this pattern would be relevant for any type of use case where you have this asynchronous type of processing that you need to do on data coming in. So there's a little bit of a lag allowed between seeing the information and what that information then needs to be done onto the site. So the architecture that we'll make use of here is making use of, first of all, we need something to absorb these events. For that, we're going to be able to use Google Cloud PubSub. Of course, something like Apache Kafka as well would be suitable here. So this is our messaging system. We're going to be passing messages on to this to these messaging pieces. And the nice thing about these is they can act as shock absorbers. So imagine you have a massive spike in information coming in. These will absorb and hold on to those messages ready for downstream processing. So in terms of downstream processing, we're going to make use of Google Cloud Dataflow. That's the team that I'm with in Google Cloud. And Google Cloud Dataflow, first we'll need to pull the information from PubSub. So that's the read operation. Then we're going to do some slight pre-processing of that information. Now, this could be as trivial as just decode call to get it ready for the call to Gemma, but it could be far more sophisticated. For example, you may be able to enrich that information with historical data, or perhaps getting a different prompt ready based on the information for the call to Gemma. Next, we're actually going to then make a call to Gemma. So in this case, the Dataflow workers actually, it comes with GPUs, and we have the L4s that we've loaded the model into. Of course, you can also make use of GKE or Vertex AI at that point if the use case demands it. So both of those options are available. So we're going to make the call to the model, and then we're going to do some post-processing. In this case, just cleaning up the format. But again, in full use cases, you'll probably want to do some enrichment of that data before you land it finally onto your sites. So, and actually on the end of this, we've got, various use cases. The one use case that really excites me about these kind of patterns is connecting your analytical system directly to your operational system. So being able to make use of Gemma to do some processing and then affect operational systems in near real time. So with that, I'm going to go and show you some code. It is a developer session. So those not familiar with Apache Beam. So Apache Beam is the SDK we use to define the pipelines that we then run on Dataflow. This is a sample of the Python SDK, and that pipe operator you see just indicates apply. So to P, which is the pipeline, we apply these transformations. What we're doing essentially is describing a pipeline, which is a directed acyclic graph of computation. So the first line, we're reading from PubSub. Next, we're going to do that decode call just to get things ready. Finally, we use what is known in Beam as a turnkey transform, which is the run inference transform. This, under the covers, does a lot of work to make sure the model's available and everything is done for you, essentially productionizing the code for you with that single line of code. Next, after that, we have our results. We're going to format the output. And then in this case, we print, but slight modification that I'm going to show in a minute for the demo. So if I could go over to the laptop, please. And this is where I hope the demo gods are with me. So first, let me just double check that we are still logged in. We are. That's great. Here, this is the Dataflow user interface, and what we're seeing is the representation of code that's been written for the pipeline. It's slightly different to the code that we saw earlier in that there's two inputs to this. So we've made it a little bit more interesting. And the reason for this is, imagine you've got multiple sites that are sending information and you want to make a distinction between those. Here, we're using two Cloud PubSub topics to be able to do that. Of course, there are variations on this architecture. For example, you could do key value pairs into a single multiplex PubSub and deal with it that way. I thought it'd be nice to show this because you can then see they can actually build quite complex branches and complex pipelines with the code in a fairly trivial manner. So this is the actual code for that pipeline. And you'll notice it's a little bit different from the one before in that we've now got two pieces where we are reading from two different sources, one from site A, one from site B. These are going into this distributed collection because Beam and Dataflow will take care of processing this across many workers. And if you'll notice the Lambda function now slightly different, we've got a tuple where we are adding a key. So we know it's coming from A and we know it's coming from B in these two cases. Then we flatten these things together. Essentially, because all of the elements are the same type, we can put them all together into this distributed collection. Then the rest of the code is similar to what we saw before. We're going to run it through inference and then format the output. So this is the pipeline. Again, it's with Beam, what we try is not no code, of course, but hopefully this, you'll agree, is fairly low code for the sophistication of the thing that it's doing. Okay, now, so this is what that is represented of. So the way that you would work with, once you've written that code, you submit the job to the server. I've already done that for us. And that usually, in this case, would take about 5 to 10 minutes to get this up and running. Now, to actually send some information into this, I'm going to send information into this site A pub sub topic. To do that, I'm going to switch to the Google Cloud Pub Sub UI. And in here, we can actually publish a message directly into that topic. Of course, in a production system, you'd have systems calling this function. You wouldn't have someone typing in here, of course. Now, I'm actually going to put the prompt in because it makes for a better demo. Again, in a proper system, you would either in that Lambda function, you'd have the prompt there, or you would be pulling up the prompt from other sources based on the information coming in. But for this one, I'm going to do what is the sentiment for the statement. Again, going back to our use case of people doing reviews. Okay, I'll leave the spelling in there. Hopefully Gemma will ignore that. And that pizza was okay. Let's not make it too easy and see. Oh, I am English, so we have to say please. It's very important. So we're going to ask very nicely of Gemma to do the work for us. This has submitted the message. We can see it's published. Now, what that is doing is, of course, it sent it to site A and it sent it to Gemma. And at the end, you'll note we actually have a publish. This is actually publishing into another pub sub topic. And this is how you would usually connect these systems to your operational systems, using these messaging systems in between to get the information across. So now I need to pull that message to see how it does. This is Google Cloud Pub Sub, again, the UI. In this case, it's the subscription. And I'm going to pull from that subscription. Let's see if, there we are. The demigods were with us today. And that pizza was okay. He did a good job. It came out as neutral. So with that simple flow, we've actually processed the message through the system. And the nice thing is with Dataflow, because it's a fully managed system, if that workload, instead of one person typing, we ramped it up and we had a large backlog of information coming in, the fully managed Dataflow service would then just add more workers to be able to cope with that backlog to get everything back in. And then once the workload's gone back down, again, it will bring things back down. So with that small amount of code, we wrote a fairly sophisticated pipeline that would be, in production very quickly.